Beth Connerty is Regional Innovation Officer at the iFAB Tech Hub and Associate Director of Business Development for the Integrated Bioprocessing Research Lab at the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana. She was previously Vice President of Business Development at Nano Elements Source, which owns a portfolio of patents developed at Oak Ridge National Lab for the fermentation of nanoparticles. Beth got her PhD in Energy Science and Engineering from the, do you say Brett?
Bredesen Center. Yep.
Oh, thank you. A joint program between the University of Tennessee, Knoxville and Oak Ridge National Lab. She also has an MS in bioenergy and a BS in chemistry from the University of Illinois. Beth, thanks for joining us at the Food and Ag Tech Huddle.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Kathleen.
Uh, Tell us, just for starters, what does the Integrated Bioprocessing Research Lab, or you call it the IBRL, do?
Yeah, leave it to the university to have a lot of acronyms and a lot of words. IBRL is a pilot scale facility at the University of Illinois. So it was designed with this idea that there are a lot of great technologies developed in research labs around the country, but getting them proven at industrially relevant scales is really expensive, and often a place where those technologies fail. So our pilot plants are a consolidation of pilot scale equipment that are available for external users and partners to come in so that not every single technology, not every single startup company has to buy and build their own. Um, so we're really designed to help bioprocessing, food and industrial manufacturing technologies get from ideation and the bench scale de-risked at the pilot scale on their way to commercialization.
So you were really set up in 2024. The EDA awarded
Mhm.
the IBRL and its 31 partner iFAB consortium a $51 million Tech Hub grant. You were really set up for it, obviously, from what you just described. But how you still had a lot to, how did you design the mission for the Tech Hub?
Yeah, so IBRL itself opened in 2018, and I think that's important because it was really the impetus for the Tech Hub. Quickly, one of IBRL's core competencies became precision fermentation, and my background has some of our pilot scale fermenters in the background as a visual. But we were receiving so much demand for that capacity, for those tanks. Um, and we had wait lists for our own equipment. And then importantly, we had nowhere to send our clients once they graduated from the pilot scale. We are still part of an R1 institution. We mostly do research and development, but these companies needed to do early manufacturing runs somewhere. And so when they were leaving our facility and they'd ask us where they should go next, how they should partner next, it was good luck, try Europe. We have no idea. And this seemed like a really silly problem to have. The state of Illinois and central Illinois has a ton of biomanufacturing capacity. Both ADM and Primient have been on IBRL's advisory board since we opened in 2018. And through those relationships, we knew that they had underutilized fermentation assets just down the road in Decatur, Illinois. So it was kind of this demand that we were seeing, the partnerships we had established over several years, that was able to, formally coalesce this coalition. And nothing like a federal grant deadline to hold some industry feet to the fire and really get them at the table in a concrete way.
You kept your geography very tight. A lot of these grants you see, there's kind of almost a add partners because it looks good, because that name sounds good or that partner looks good. You didn't do that. You limited it to just 3 counties. Why did you choose to do that? And, did all your consortium members come from those counties?
Yeah, you're right. And I'm at the University of Illinois, so we've certainly seen that, trying to make sure everybody participates. But we really looked at what the Tech Hubs program was doing. And the goal of it was place-based investment in communities that are not, traditional venture capital hubs. They weren't investing in coastal major cities. Um, and they wanted to do targeted investment. We looked at the assets, and in the iFAB region is Champaign, Piatt, and Macon counties in central Illinois. So the University of Illinois on the eastern end and Decatur, Illinois, so Primient and ADM on the western end of that tech hub. Um, we really thought that within that three county region, we could have a targeted impact, that we had the assets that were necessary to take the first step in this. All of our full consortium members, all 35, do have some type of ongoing business presence in that three county region. But I am also not naive enough to think that we can build an entire economy with just those three counties. We certainly have ways to engage and work with partners more regionally. I mean, we are driven to grow economic development in the state of Illinois. But to be a full consortium member, it is a very tight region here in central Illinois.
So when you were putting this whole thing together, did people think you were going to be able to do this?
Um, I think that they were maybe a little bit surprised. I was told that maybe we should include some other partners, and I'm not going to name any specifics, but there was some advice that we weren't thinking big enough. That being said, ADM and Primient are major industrial players in the state of Illinois, and they are large employers. They are large contributors to the state's GDP. So having them at the table does give us some additional credence. People believed us a little bit more when we could get those two competitors at the table together. But I do think there was a little bit of surprise through this whole process.
Kind of that think locally and act globally, right?
That's the hope, yes.
I want to say, as we're talking, if anyone listening in our immediate audience wants to ask a question, just message me in the chat, and we'd love to pull you up here and have you join Beth in my conversation. Now, was it? I thought 31, but you said 35. It's 35 partners. Like,
It has grown to 35. Yes, it might have been 31 when we first submitted to the EDA. But people have seen what we're doing and some of the conversations we were having, but maybe didn't happen in time for the actual grant deadline, have progressed. And to be honest, some companies have relocated to the region already, and then they again qualify as having an ongoing business presence, and so we've been talking to them as well.
and why did they relocate to the region?
Yeah, we have had a couple really great conversations about the assets that we're building. And maybe it's important I get asked all the time how this $51 million is getting spent, and we are building more shared use assets. So I described IBRL, how we are trying to decrease the capital costs for companies and technologies. And then there are two other sites with Primient and ADM that will be building shared use assets as well. So when you start to put all of these pieces together in such a tight radius, it makes it really easy for early stage companies to kind of plug in with whichever partner is the most suited for their stage of development. So our hypothesis was built, a field of dreams. If we build it, they will come. Luckily, just by shining a spotlight on what we're doing, some of those companies are already engaging and looking to have a footprint here. Notably, one of our very close partners, Boston Bioprocess, they were an early adopter. As you can tell by their name, they were founded in Boston. We've known their founders through our work in the pilot plant for a while, and they started to talk to us about their next stage of growth and development. We explained what we were doing, and they actually moved to Champaign-Urbana in 2023. So just as we were ramping up this tech hub, and they're one of our very first and closest partners, and that's a perfect example of what we are trying to accomplish.
Now, when they move there, do they tend to go into the research park, the University of Illinois Research Park?
Yeah, that's we work very closely. I work with the research park staff almost every day. And yes, that's really the goal. I want them all to take an office in the research park and then use IBRL as their pilot facility. And when they get to manufacturing scale, we can look at other sites in the region. But for the early stage companies, the research park is just a perfect landing place for them. It is less than 2 miles on a day like today. It's walkable to IBRL. So yeah, and that's where Boston Bio is. That's where their office is, and then they do utilize some of our pilot plant space as well. So it's a great example of again kind of the complementarity of the resources.
So what kinds of things are these companies making in these fermenters?
Oh, it is all sorts of things. And I'm sure most people are familiar with fermentation as a concept. It's the technology that's used to make beer and wine. It's also the technology that's used to make ethanol for fuel. But now we're looking at more high value end products, though I will say everything that's not pharmaceutical. So, food and industrial manufacturing. We do a lot of work in agricultural inputs, so things like fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, biostimulants. We do textile precursors, so replacements for polyester and nylon. We do cosmetic ingredients. We do other biofuels. It's this broad range. I assume that people would like to hear a couple fun examples. Um, so one is a startup company called Geltor, and the examples I'm sharing are ones that we're allowed to talk about publicly. Geltor had a cosmetic ingredient. Hate to burst any bubbles, but collagen is typically made as a pig processing byproduct. And while pigs and humans share a decent amount of DNA, those proteins are not 100% human compatible. Geltor was trying to make better proteins for cosmetic applications. We helped them with a lot of their early scale up development work. And now I can literally walk into Sephora. I can buy a jar of lotion that has a protein in it that we helped develop in IBRL because they are at full manufacturing scale. And that's been a really fun one for us.
Well, do they stay then? I mean, do some companies just come and work with iFAB and then go back to wherever they came from?
Some of them do, yes. I was talking about Boston Bio relocating here, and we love that. But Geltor was a San Francisco Bay Area based company, and they are still headquartered there. But if they are saying that Illinois and Central Illinois is the place where they need to spend their research and development money to prove out their technology, I view that as a huge win for the state and for our region as well. We would love for these companies to relocate here, but that's not going to be true or realistic for every single one of them. So as long as we can engage them and get them here and see the resources that we have, we think that's a long-term plan for growing as well.
So you came from Tennessee. You were at Oak Ridge, and were you running the IBRL
So not at Oak Ridge. So at Oak
at
Ridge, I was working in the Office of Industrial
yeah.
Partnerships and Economic Development.
But then you came to Illinois.
Mhm.
Did you come to run the IBRL?
Yeah, I think I was employee number three. I was hired about 6 months before construction finished. I have this bad habit of I really like being in positions, my degree programs, everything where it's brand new and there are no parameters yet. So I came in about 6 months before IBRL finished construction. We opened our pilot plant with one fermenter, one centrifuge, and one filtration unit, and that was it. We had a bunch of empty floor space. We had to figure out how we were going to build it, how we were going to engage with partners, how we were going to engage with startup companies. And yeah, I've been very fortunate to help grow the program over the last 8 years.
I mean, you were like a tornado whirling into
Mhm.
University of Illinois, it sounds like. Did they realize all this stuff you were going to do?
Well, it also just isn't me. My colleagues are have been critical to this. I have one colleague in particular that's been with me through this whole thing, and our supervisor is a faculty member here at the U of I that's been also extremely supportive and helpful to this process. But for IBRL as a program, no, no, I don't think the university fully understood. It's a really new model for an R1. We were designed about 80% of the work that we do is for external partners. We certainly support faculty research and work on faculty-led grants, but that's not the core of what we do. The core of what we do is for external partners. And that is a new model for an R1. Silly things like even accounting practices, how account codes are set up at a university, all sort of had to be figured out for this model. And and University of Illinois administration has been incredibly supportive through this process. there have been growing pains, there have been learnings, there have been, starts and stops on certain specific topics. But overall, they saw the vision. They are supportive of finding new ways to engage. And honestly, it's just a different lens for kind of the extension mission of a land grant institution is really working with external users. So the University of Illinois administration has just been incredible through this entire growing process. Also, my college, the College of ACES, that leadership team, the dean that was in place when IBRL opened, as well as our current dean. It really falls to them if it's a risk, right? And both of those deans have just been, again, incredibly supportive and creative in how we can operate.
So you had this support, you were forging ahead with this new model, you had this support. You still had to pull together these 30 some partners. I mean, how did you do that? That seems like a lot of work, and you're calling everybody.
Yeah, it is. It's not necessarily easy. And I joke that Regional Innovation Officer is just a fancy title for Chief Cat Herder at this point. Um, but we would not have been able to pull together those partners if we hadn't already been working with them. So, by having about 5 years of working in IBRL and establishing relationships with industry partners, again, we had ADM and Primient as well as others on our advisory board from day one. We realized how important industry engagement was going to be for our model to be successful, and we wanted them to feel involved and like they had a stake in what we were doing. And because those relationships already existed, because we had been able to prove ourselves a little bit for a few years to industry, both in relevance, in talent development, in our safety record, it was easier to make those phone calls and say, look, we've been working together for this many years anyway. There's this great grant opportunity. Let's go after it together. Of course, offering to let those companies get some of the grant money also certainly helped the conversation.
But you got a third of your partners put up cash matches. How'd you talk them into that?
They did. Yes, and we are very fortunate for that. I mean, if you ask how, looking back, I still don't fully know. It was incredible, and we're grateful. But I think we had been selling the mission, and it wasn't just a pipe dream. We could point to IBRL and say, look, we have companies every single year, several of them that we are sending to Europe to do their next stage of development because we don't have these resources. If we had these resources, they would stay. If they didn't have to do the time zone shift and the travel and the employee burnout, like they would stick around. So again, it wasn't just a pipe dream. We could point to actual impact. We could point to actual companies. And I think that that tangible outcome was what made it a little bit easier. That we could say, look, this is a small amount of money we're asking you for most of them. The industry partners certainly came with substantial resources, but for our local governments and chambers, it was a small amount of money and it was just to show that they believed in what we were doing and would be supportive for the duration.
Well, speaking of speaking of all these government entities,
Mhm.
I got an email a couple days ago as we were planning this from the Illinois Department of Commerce, from the governor's office, essentially thanking me for highlighting you. So you obviously worked well with them too, right?
Oh, the state has been absolutely incredible partners to us. We have our federal policy manager, I have to call him out by name, Chad Phillips, comes to all of our leadership team meetings. He is there, he is accessible, he helps us, he participates in events with us. It has just been really, really, really supportive from both DCEO and the governor's office at the state level. They released their 5-year economic plan, I think it was last summer, summer of 24, and biomanufacturing and fermentation was named as one of the strategy and strategic growth areas for the state. So again, they're seeing the impact we're able to have, and I mean, we all want the same thing. We all want wins for the state. We all want economic development for the state. And it's really easy to work together when you all have the same goals.
So what do you point to right now? You know, you're what, only a year in. What are some of the accomplishments you've had already?
Yeah, so a lot of the money is going to construction projects. Those take a while, but they are all moving forward. I think one of the biggest wins that we weren't necessarily expecting is that we thought we would build these facilities and then start attracting companies. Instead, biomanufacturing has been growing for the last 5 to 8 years at a huge rate. And the companies that were already looking to build their own manufacturing sites all of a sudden said, what's going on in central Illinois? Maybe we should go talk to them. So we're actively engaged in about 2 dozen site selection conversations that represent about $3 billion worth of capital investment and several hundred jobs, which for the communities of our size is quite impactful. Again, we're not going to land every single one of them, but a few of these, again, I think we're getting close to being able to talk about it, but we have another startup company that is based in the Bay Area. They are opening an office in Champaign January 1st. So we have another one of these coming to the region. Some co-locations and partnership opportunities with our industry partners in Decatur as well. So I think that the influx of companies and realizing what we can do to help them progress and save them money has been a lot faster than we anticipated. And we're drowning as a result, but it's also a really good problem to have.
It's an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing it, Beth. And
Absolutely.
we'll have you back in a couple years to figure out what happened next.
That sounds great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Um, Tammy, how do I stop the recording? Oh, I got it.